Arena is a very important part of Elemental Fission, and I know that a lot of people don't really like PvP and don't really want to take Arena very seriously, but it's still important that you farm it because the points that you get for the honor shop are very important. It's very important that you buy your power bean every week. It's very important that you come in here and start leveling up all of this stuff so that your account can get stronger and you can achieve more in the long run. And it's a very long-term investment, so the sooner you get started on it, the better. So I want to try to give you a way to approach arena offense building, even if you're new to the game, even if you're low level, even if you're somebody that doesn't care about your rank, doesn't want to try to climb, just wants to be able to farm arena efficiently every day, and maybe you're not real sure how to put a team together. So there's obviously countless ways to build teams, and it's kind of ever evolving in these games. There will be metas that will form an offense, and then metas that will form in defense to counter those metas, and it's just kind of this never-ending thing, right? So right now we're in the early phases, and it's already sort of beginning to shift, right? So I'm going to talk to you about two main types of arena offenses that you can build, so that you have one that you can go in and farm quickly manually, and then you have one that you can farm on auto safely. And if you don't want to fight real people, if you don't want to climb the ranks and fight real people, if you come in here and go training field, you get several of these every day. I think you get easy enemy, then you get this page of more difficult enemies. I think you get 20 a day in here. It could be more. You might get another page after this. I'm not 100% sure, but you have 20 fights you can come in here and farm a day. So you don't really ever have to fight another person if you don't want to. You can just come in here and fight the AI. But either way, I want to equip you with the tools to build an actual offense, like follow the archetype of building an offense instead of throwing your best units in, because a lot of the time you'll see offenses and defenses of people just throwing all their nat 5s in thinking that should make it powerful, and it's really way more about synergy and speed tuning and what the team is doing, and you can have a lot of success with even 3 stars. So the first one we're going to talk about today is called the cleave, and what the cleave is, it's designed to get in and out quickly. It's kind of your fast farmer. It's nice to have one if you decide to do rush for weekly reset. It's probably the most, like, the oldest and most popular type of arena offense. And generally, when someone's building a defense, that's one of the things you have to keep in mind is I need to make sure I'm not cleavable. So your goal is to build a cleave that can that can cleave even the uncleavable stuff, right? So there's a few elements that you need to keep in mind when you're putting together your cleave team. You're going to need a speed leader in most cases. You're going to need a turn meter booster because you're going to have some big damage on the team. And in building that big damage, you're not really going to be able to hit the speed threshold to guarantee they go first on their own. So a booster is going to help your damage get the turn before the enemies get the turn. In some cases, you're going to want a buffer, an attack buffer usually, but sometimes a crit rate buffer is also nice. You're going to want someone to remove buffs, and this one's negotiable. If you are someone who only wants to farm the training dummies every day and stay in very low level arena, then you probably can get away without focusing on the stripper. The stripper is for as you begin to climb and zeal gear becomes more prominent, you're going to need to be able to remove that immunity so that you can set your damage dealer up to do what they need to do. But again, if you're just going to farm the training dummies, you can ignore the stripper part of this, okay? Then you need a defense down champ, an AoE defense down champ, and then you need a nuker. So how do we find the units in our roster that can fill these roles? You see, we have more than 4 roles. So what we want to do is we want to find units that can do more than one of these things at a time. So let's go through and talk about how to do that. We can start with our leader type. We know we said we wanted a speed leader. So what we can do is you can either just kind of sift through them like this, because there won't be a ton, or you can even start trying to narrow it down a little more. Maybe you want to see if you've got a speed leader that also has an AoE defense down. So if you have Water Puppet Master, that's going to be a pretty popular unit for this. Puppet Master at 6 star has a 25 speed arena lead, which is pretty good. They have this AoE crowd control, and crowd control is wonderful insurance in a cleave, because basically if you don't win on the first or second turn, things are going to start getting bad for you real quick. If you can add some crowd control into the mix, you can prolong that a little bit. You can give yourself a little bit more time to clean up. So the crowd control here is very handy. And then the passive inflicts the defense down. Now it's only one turn, so if you get cut, if your damage dealer gets cut, if you're not speed tuned tightly enough, then the defense down goes away and it doesn't really matter. But again, also the crowd control alleviates that a little bit. This is a great unit. This is a great unit that's not super hard to get. It is a 4-star, so it's not technically free to play, but you play the game for any amount of time, especially right now when the roster's not very deep, you'll probably pull this unit. So that's a really good option to put on your cleave. We'll talk more about Water Sky Police here in a second, but not as a leader, because I think she has a guild lead. Another example of a good leader is the 33 lead that the Fire Twin Blade brings. Now this is among the best speed leads in the game for Arena, but it's a little bit harder to build a cleave around because he's not really doing anything else to support the cleave. He's just bringing you the speed lead. So if you happen to have this unit and you're in a situation like I talked about where you just want to farm the training gummies or you want to stay low, and maybe you can get away without filling every single role, maybe you could do without the stripper and still build a pretty solid cleave around this unit. And it can be done. You can build a high level cleave around this unit, but especially earlier on when you're not sure who does what and still getting used to building a team, he can be a little bit harder to do it around because again, he's not doing anything else for the actual cleave. He's just giving you the speed lead. So this is how you would do it. You would come in and just kind of diagnose what your speed leads are, what everybody does. You want to make sure that they are universal to everybody and not just elemental, right? Unless you're building an all one element cleave, which I don't necessarily recommend, but you do what you got to do. So out of here, you'd say, okay, I think Water Puppet Master. Also, I might call this unit Archon sometimes. I don't know why in my head I want to keep calling this unit an Archon, but if I do that at any point, just know I mean Puppet Master. Water Puppet Master would be a fantastic option to build your cleave around, and relatively budget friendly, right? So that would take care of two of the roles. Let's say you didn't use Puppet Master. Let's say you had Fire Twin Blade and you wanted to use that, and now you need the defense down. I think Water Sky Police, fantastic unit for this. The A3, you have AoE defense down with an attack buff for the whole team. So now she's doing more than one thing, right? She's putting defense down on all the units and buffing your attacker. So excellent unit for something like this. She will need a stripper in higher levels though, because she won't be able to do this if they have Zeal runes, and a lot of the time in higher levels they're going to have Zeal runes. So another fantastic option to have on your team. You could even run her with Water Puppet Master. Just really double down on getting that defense down up and get the attack buff up on your nuker. So that's how you do it. If you want to find your damage dealer, you come here, you go nuker, you see who you've got that can hit on an AoE scale that you think might be nice for the damage. Big plus, if you happen to have someone that's light or dark that can do it for you, but it's not necessary. I use Fire Dr. Evil, and I don't really pay much attention. And if it's a full water team, I'll think twice about it. But the way mine's set up, I can kind of get away with even hitting water teams. So it doesn't have to be light or dark, and you don't always have to have elemental advantage depending on how you set the team up, okay? Before we move on, one unit I do want to make sure that I talk specifically about here is the Tree Bookworm. He is one of the more popular units in the game, and it's because of this A3. He's got a 3-hitter that ignores defense, and what this does is alleviates a lot of the pressure of the rest of the team. You can now get away without having the stripper. You can get away without having the defense down. He can do pure damage through those things. He does not need to be set up. He really just needs to get a turn. So if you can get an attack buff on him, he'll do a lot of work. And this is generally who people have in mind when they're building their defense. You'll hear a lot of the time people will say, what do you think about my defense? And someone will say, I'm just going to bookworm it. People are just going to bookworm it. So that's why you don't see a lot of water units on defense. You tend to see very fire heavy units, very HP heavy units, very, very tanky stuff. You're generally trying to build a defense that people aren't going to be able to bookworm. So he is kind of the like prime, very popular nuker spot for the cleave. And I just wanted to make sure that I specifically talked about him and why he's so good and what he makes available. For example, we talked a little bit earlier about the Fire Twin Blade having the really good speed lead, but not really bringing much else to the cleave. When you're running a bookworm cleave, it's fine because you need so much less. You need the speed lead, you need the booster. It's nice to have an attack buffer, and then bookworm can do his thing. So it's much easier to build a cleave around Bookworm, theoretically. But the issue is that because he's so popular and because he's so strong, it's become sort of the format of defense building to make sure you are building a defense that can't be bookwormed. So it was worth talking about him just because of how popular and how strong he is. So let's move on. But that's it. Now, as far as the way that the team works and what you're trying to do, let's just jump in here. This is my cleave. This is the main cleave that I run. I have Dark Music Queen in the lead. I have Fire Music Queen. I have Dark Pumpkin. I have Fire Dr. Evil. So I'm getting my speed lead and my defense down from Dark Music Queen with a little bit of extra damage. I also have her in a bash set as a little bit of that insurance that we talked about. I have the Fire Music Queen as my stripper. Her A3 hits all enemies, removes all buffs, and knocks their turn meter back, which is a sort of modified form of crowd control, a little bit of extra insurance, and it won't glance. That's why I can get away with having her as my stripper, because she's not going to glance. If you glance when you hit someone and you're trying to remove a buff, you won't remove it, but since she won't glance, it's basically just an accuracy check, so as long as I win the accuracy check, she removes the buffs, okay? I have the Pumpkin as my booster. That's all he's here for, is just to be really, really fast and help my team get the first turn. And then my nuker, Dr. Evil, who self-buffs on the A3, so I don't need a buffer to set him up to do anything, okay? So the way that this fight works, the way that the team works when we get into the fight, rather, I should say, is my Pumpkin will initiate. Assuming they all had Zeal, my Fire Queen would remove it and knock their turn meters back. Dark Queen comes in with the defense down, and Dr. Evil cleans it all up. So you see, that's how the team is supposed to work. It's very quick. It's very in and out. It's just so you can come in and farm all your tokens real quick and get your points and then get back to whatever else you want to do, okay? So those are the pros. The pros are it's very quick. It's very in and out, and you can be done with it quickly. The cons are you have to be a little particular about who you attack, and if you don't win in the first turn or two, it's gonna start getting ugly for you. So, very popular team. One I would highly recommend that you give some consideration to. And I mean, again, as far as like budget options, if we come down here and just start looking around, Water Puppet Master, excellent option at 6-star for the lead. Popo Rider, Tree Popo Rider can be your booster. Another really good booster would be the Water Turtle Tank, 50%. Turn meter is a huge turn meter boost with a crit buff, so you could focus more on attack and crit damage on your nuker and let the turtle tank fill in the hole for crit rate. You know what I mean? So that fantastic option. Super budget nuker here. You could find 3 stars that do AoE and just slot one in for whichever element you think is appropriate. Again, super budget there. AoE defense down. The Water Sky Police is good. I think Water Gyro might have an AoE defense down in his kit, actually. Yeah. There's options out there. You don't have to have a bunch of Nat 5s and a bunch of crazy strong units for this to work, okay? It's just about finding who fills the roles and then getting them geared appropriately for the level that you want to be in, okay? So that's it. That's the cleave. That's the first unit. The second unit that we're going to talk about today is called a Bruiser comp, and it is sort of the antithesis to the cleave. In the way that the cleave is designed to get in and out quickly, the Bruiser team is designed to go in and just outlive, just out-sustain the enemy team. Generally, it's a little bit safer to run them on auto. So I would come in here and put my cleave, and let's say I was doing something else and I wouldn't want to focus on the game too heavily right now, and I wanted to farm, I could just throw in my Bruiser team and let them come in and do their thing. And it would take them several minutes, but this team doesn't have very much sustain. So in the long run, I'd win this fight. It would take a long time, but even on auto, I'd probably not lose this fight, right? So a couple of the things to keep in mind when you're putting together a Bruiser team, and in a lot of ways, a Bruiser team can be a lot broader. I think there's a lot more opportunities to build Bruiser teams than there are to build cleave teams, because you need such specific things that are, I think, a little bit more difficult to find and maybe a little bit harder to get together into one team. Here, it's really just about having tanky units, having good sustain in the team, so good heals, self-heals, team heals, debuff removal is very important for this. Anybody that also does anything to protect other allies is also quite aggravating to deal with in a Bruiser comp. Big plus if you can have units whose damage scales off of their tank stat. For example, my Fire Iron Fist scales off of her defense, so I can increase her survivability while also increasing her damage output. That's a huge plus for these kinds of teams, and it will speed things up quite a bit. And then if you can get any crowd control in the mix, that's always a plus. Crowd control is always a nice plus. So there are, again, a lot more units that fit the Bruiser mold, I would say, than there are units that fit the cleave mold. Water Barb is a great Bruiser unit. Honestly, Fire Twin Blade is a good Bruiser unit. She's actually a surprisingly good Bruiser unit. She can be very hard to deal with in the higher levels if she's geared well. She's got a very annoying passive to try to get around. So this is not a bad little Bruiser team. I'm not sure what he's doing here. I guess he's stripping buffs and bringing some damage, but I would reckon he'd go down pretty quick. But so we'll talk a little bit about mine specifically, and then we'll go talk about how to find some units that do this and some units that I think stand out for this role. For what I have here from my Fire Iron Fist is a full cleanse with 3-turn immunity and attack bar increase. I've got a single target defense down and stun here, and then buff removal on the A1. So she's an example of a unit where every turn she takes is pretty valuable. She's doing something pretty big every time. And we've got a pretty beefy HP lead from her. The Fire War Nurse is a fantastic option. She is among the better units in the game for this type of composition. She is very, very hard to kill. She is even if you have Oblivion, she's very hard to kill because she's got this on a pretty low cooldown. So even if you can get Oblivion on her, unless you can also silence her, she's probably just going to cleanse it and keep going. But she's got a passive that removes a debuff from herself and the ally with the lowest health, and then balance the health ratio every turn. So like if somebody's really close to dying and she's got a lot of health and they're both stunned, at the beginning of her turn, she's going to remove that and then pull their HP up to hers. It is very aggravating to deal with. She's a very, very strong unit. Lots of good support for allies, turn meter fill, extra heals, cleanses. Crazy, crazy good unit for this. I like the Light Dome Fighter for damage. I sneak her in for my damage and my defense, and I use her a lot in Guild War offense. She is, I don't think people are expecting her to do what she does, but she can kind of bang. She's got a passive where she can't be sniped. She can't be one-shotted. You have to hit her 5 times to kill her. At least 5 times to kill her. You can bomb her. In my experience, units that have passives like this, like the Fire Barb as well, you can just bob through it. So for her, it makes sense because it says the incoming damage of 1 hit won't exceed. But on Fire Barb, I think it says 1 instance of damage, but I'm pretty sure I've bombed through his passive before, so I don't know if that's intentional or what. But anyway, she can't be one-shotted, so she's very bruisery, and she doesn't need a lot of HP, because it doesn't matter how much HP she has, she still can't take more than 20% of it per hit. So, and I'm not going to get so much HP on her that someone isn't, that someone's not doing that much damage to her anyway, you know what I mean? She's got AoE crowd control in the taunt here, so if I stacked the accuracy on her, that could be a bit of a nuisance. I don't focus it super hard, but it's there. And then she's got an A1 with a pretty decent little multiplier and a stun, more crowd control. So I've got her in counter sets. So every time someone touches her, there's a chance that she's going to counterattack, do what I assume would be a surprising amount of damage to them, and potentially stun them. So just a nuisance and kind of the threat of the team. Everyone else is really here to just kind of keep her supported, keep her alive, and let her bang everybody down over time. And then my Fire Surgeon is on a little bit of a hybrid build, and he's here to negate any annoying passives like her or him, because there are a lot of very annoying passives in the game. So you see, it's like there's a lot to the team, but it's also kind of straightforward. It's really just like put a lot of damage on my Dome Fighter, make everybody else tanky and annoying, and keep her alive. You know what I mean? That's in a simplified version, and that's really it. I'm not going to do a fight in this video because it will take a while, but you get the idea. So again, you can come in here and you can look for tanks, and you can kind of scroll through this way. The bears, I think, are probably some of the more common and popular units for Bruise teams. Core is usually a good indicator that they'll be good on a Bruise team. So if you're looking through your units and trying to figure out who might be good for it, the Core tag is usually a good sign. It's like that steady, consistent damage, not that nuker type that I'm getting from somebody like Dr. Evil, but I'm sure you've hit a tree bear in arena before and had him ruin your day. You know what I mean? Like, they can still do a lot of damage even though they're not nukers. And he's very tanky, and his damage scales off of his tank stats. So the fire bear, the tree bear, the light bear, the mercenary mothers, the monks. The list really does go on and on. All the barbarians, the iron fist in most cases, the dome fighters, the occult girl, the occult dancers can be great budget options for healers. All the man at arms. You're at no shortage of options here for your Bruiser team. It's just a matter of seeing what you can put together and seeing how it works. You know what I mean? If you're finding yourself losing a lot of fights, it's either a gear issue or perhaps a synergy issue. And if you're trying to farm the training dummies and losing, it's probably a synergy issue. You know what I mean? As far as units that like really stand out, we talked about the fire war nurse. I think that the water man at arms is probably the strongest unit for this in the game currently. I think he's the most needed nerf in the game at the moment. And I would say that even if I had him. It's not just because I don't have him that I say that. He is busted for this. So let's talk a little bit about why I think he's so good for this. He has, on his A1, a freeze with no chance to proc. So it's just an accuracy check, which is insane for an A1. Decent multiplier, and damage increases as the target's HP gets lower. That's nice. Here's some of that some of that ally protection we talked about. 2-turn escort, and grants himself a 2-turn healing over time. Extra turn after using the ability. So it's already on a 3-turn cooldown, but he gets an extra turn after using it, so that basically makes it a 2-turn cooldown. Escort, whoever he puts it on, the damage that they take will be reduced to 0, and then he'll only tank 50% of the damage, so it kind of negates any big hit anyway, and then he'll counterattack. And if he's got the accuracy, it's pretty much a guaranteed freeze. And if you've taken any damage, he's going to do more damage because your HP's gotten lower, right? Then on the A3, we have an AoE, full turn meter depletion, and freeze with no chance to proc. It's just an accuracy check. Damage is based on his max HP, and it's on a 4-turn cooldown, and to boot, he's got a defense lead. So if you let him get a turn, pretty much, and you don't have immunity up, it's almost guaranteed the end of the fight. He's going to get the opportunity to put up escort on 1 or 2 of his allies. He's going to cycle back around to this fairly quickly because he's got a cooldown reducing a skill in the sense that he grants himself an extra turn. So he's going to be able to get back around to this really quickly. And he's going to be very tanky. He's going to do pretty good damage because he's so tanky. He's going to do more damage as the fight goes on with the counterattacks because you may not be able to sustain, especially with the crowd control that he's going to be bringing. He is very, 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 very strong. So if you have this unit and you're not utilizing him, then fix it because he needs to be in your Bruiser teams for sure. He can do a lot more. That's not all he can do, but I think he is just an absolute standout for Bruiser teams, and he really needs to be nerfed in my opinion. Again, all the barbs, the monks, the merc mothers, most of the bears, the tanks, the dome fighters, the giants. There's a ton of options in the game for this. So you will see a lot more of these in arena because this is generally the type of composition people build to try to avoid getting cleaved. So if we go through and start looking at defenses, this is kind of an interesting little hybrid. That's a cleave. This would be an example of a cleave. You've got a speed leader. You've got your AoE defense down. You've got your buffer and turn meter booster, and you've got your damage. That's just your absolute standard cleave, okay? They don't have a stripper. Remember we talked about needing a stripper? So if you wanted to counter this, if I wanted to counter this, I would just take this team in because he is on Zeal still. She's on Zeal. She's on Zeal. She's not, but the fact that she is means she might as well be because she's just going to cleanse her as soon as she catches whatever debuff she catches. So I'll go in. She'll go first. She'll boost. She'll try to do her thing. It won't work because I'll have Zeal up, and then he'll hit. And 1, I'm very heavy fire. 2, there will be no defense down. 3, most of my units are on Zeal, so he won't be able to knock my turn meter back anyway. So I'll take a little bit of damage, but I'll come in, I'll immunity boost, I'll heal, I'll put Oblivion on him probably, and then I'll let her go to work. You know what I mean? So that's why a stripper is important when you're running a cleave, because if especially if you're running one on defense, it's just very easy to counter with zeal runes. And it'll help you understand why it's important to have a stripper when you're running it on offense, because again, just kind of easy to cancel out. Here we've got kind of an interesting one. This is like a Leo, kind of a Leo cleave, tree barb cleave. Sorry, that's nothing right now. That's a one man. A lot of us are running one man defenses right now, so we can drop a little lower and farm. Everybody's running one man. There's no bruisers on my list right now. This is kind of a bruiser. Yeah, this would be a good example. This bastard with the 2 light bears. You've got a very heavy arena defense lead. You've got a very annoying unit in the Dark Sphere Sage. You've got double light bear, so very scary damage, lots of counter attack. And then you've got the water Iron Fist, who is a very hard to kill unit if you don't have Oblivion. And sometimes a bruiser comp will even be more of a stall, where it's not so much trying to kill you as much as it's just trying to be impossible to kill so that you eventually have to give up. This one's got a lot of threat to it with the double light bear. She can be sneaky threat sometimes, but she's really just there to be hard to kill. But this is a good example of like of a bruiser comp of someone that's spent a lot of money, I guess. So I would think very carefully about going in and trying to cleave. Actually, let's cleave it so you can see what it looks like when a cleave doesn't go well, because I would anticipate this is not going to be a cleavable team for me. See, I'm much faster because they're not worried about speed, because they're just here to sustain and they're here to do that bruisery type damage. So they don't really care about being fast. They're going to be very tanky. I would anticipate a lot of resistance, and these two are going to counterattack every time I hit them. So unless I can control them, it's going to be very bad. So this is not a team that I would usually cleave, but I kind of want you to see what it looks like when a cleave fails. Let's pretend. Actually, I'm not going to pretend they have zeal runes. I'm going to hit them with the A2 here and go ahead and get a defense down up so she can do a little more damage. But theoretically, they would have zeal runes. I think they should probably have zeal runes on this team. But so well, let's just do it. We'll initiate. We'll pretend they had zeal. So I knock back a little turn meter. He does his annoying thing. They both counterattacked. But you see, I kind of reset turn meters because she has that 20% knockback. So now everybody's turn meters are so low. Things look real great for me. But again, this is not the kind of team that you can really come in and cleave unless you've got insane units and gear. See the danger in just hitting them? That's bad, right? So now I could go for the stuns, or I could go for the cooldown. Since I'm so much faster, I'll go for the stuns. I didn't get any stuns, so he's dead. I'll do this. See what I'm saying? This is a great counter to a cleave. This is exactly what you have in mind when you're building that bruiser type defense to counter a cleave. This is not something that anybody with with any sense would actually try to cleave. Okay, so that's sort of what you're going for. That's why the bears are so good for it, because those counterattacks are nice, because your cleave units are typically going to be pretty squishy anyway. So if I can't control the bears and they get to start counterattacking, they're just going to pick my units off as I touch them, and they're basically going to kill my whole team without ever having to take a turn. So, obviously, light bear's a fantastic bruiser unit if you've got him. And I hate you a little bit if you have him, because I can't stop pulling LD4 dupes. But anyway, I think that pretty much covers it. I think that pretty much covers it. As far as like learning who to attack, that's just gonna come with the time. You're just gonna have to lose some fights. You're gonna have to go into arena and see this team and try to cleave it and figure out why it didn't work. You're gonna lose a lot, okay? And that's just, if you want to start trying to climb, that's honestly the best way to learn. You cannot watch enough videos to outdo the learning you'll do by just losing to units. You'll fight light bear enough times that you'll go, what the hell is this guy doing? That's such a problem for me. Right, you'll come across Dark Sphere Sage a couple times and finally go, what is it he's doing? Why does he turn into the core form? Like you'll have to start going and like reading what these units are actually doing, and the more that you have to do that, the more you'll understand the types of stuff you're seeing on defenses. You'll start to recognize the synergy. You'll start to recognize trends and habits, and there will be certain units where you go, this unit's usually on a zeal set. This unit's usually going to be really fast. This unit's usually going to have really high resistance. It'll just kind of start to come with time. So yeah, watch videos, join Discords and ask people, hang out in streams and get advice and watch other people do arena and stuff. But really the best learning is going to come from just getting in there and losing a bunch of fights. It's just going to happen, man. That's just the way it's going to go. So it's okay. It doesn't matter if you lose, especially if you're not trying to push in rush hour. There's no penalty for losing. I think you even still get some honor points when you lose a fight. I think you still get points. I can't remember where I saw that it said that, but I think even if you lose a fight, you still get a point. So there's really no penalty for losing. Other than that, it's annoying, but that's not that big of a deal. So I hope this helps you kind of get into your own roster, gives you a template of sorts to follow on putting a team together, and at least start being able to farm the training dummies so that you can start developing your honor shop, because there's a lot of really important stuff in there to buy and level up. So that's it. I'm gonna get out of here. If you've got any other tips you want to drop below, any good free-to-play units, any units that you think anybody's sleeping on, I'd be interested to hear what kind of stuff you guys are doing for your PvP teams, particularly in arena offense for this video. And maybe we'll come back soon with a defense video to help you not get cleaved constantly. So that's it. I'm going to get out of here. Hope it was helpful. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you later.